Sibyl's Lab. I have a serious passion for working with mythology and different constellations of goddesses, so we will be talking decks for goddess work today. This is actually my own take on an old school tarot tag, hashtag only 10 decks that Katie Flowers did years ago. In this version, we're pretending that I am a hermit crone, planning to devote myself for the foreseeable future to goddess work and goddess study. And I need 5 tarot decks for the journey. And I can only have 5 tarot decks for the journey. That's mostly because I value your time. And I know that if I did 10 decks, it would take forever. In reality, I'd probably bring like 25 decks. But we're going to say the top 5 decks that I think would be great for and comprehensive altogether for goddess work if I'm going on, a cloistered journey to go do goddess work. If you also fantasize about turning into a divination priestess, becoming a wild wood witch, and seeing what goddess work you can do, this is absolutely the video for you. I'm going to present these in alphabetical order, so these are not in order of preference. I'm not going to labor over doing that. It was hard enough settling on just 5. A few points to note. First, there is nudity. It's not gratuitous. These are decks that are great for the divine feminine, so it's pretty unsurprising that they would show the female form a great deal. So you can expect nudity, and if that's something you don't like, may not be the video for you. Second, and probably most important, many of these 5, probably most of these 5, are out of print. I know this is frustrating. I love TarotTube as much as you do, and it's so frustrating when you see a deck that you love and it's unreachable or unaffordable. I did not choose these decks because they are particularly special because they're no longer accessible. That's not what I want. But I did want to be authentic about what decks are in my collection that I think would be especially great for this work. And here's what I would keep in mind. And this isn't just to get me out of trouble with people who are going to be frustrated that these decks aren't available. I'm sharing these not because I think they are the only or best decks for this kind of work. I'm talking about them because I have a particular kind of relationship with them, and there are certain kinds of work that I think are fantastic to explore with these decks. So I want to connect with you over decks that you find in your collection or you otherwise identify and pull into your home that you connect with in a similar way. It's really the relationship that I want to share with you, and think about how you can weave something similar into your own practice and find what decks kind of activate that relationship or become accessible for that kind of work. So please enjoy the conversation on those terms. And enough with the caveats, I'm gonna jump into sharing my top 5 decks for goddess work as an imaginary witch crone cloistered divination priestess. The first of these decks is the Babylonian Tarot. This deck is by Sandra Cicero, published in 2005 by Llewellyn. Let me show these cards one at a time. So this is an 83 card deck. It has an extra major that precedes the Fool. It's the Genesis card, and 4 extra cards that are the cherubs or divine protectors aligned with each element. This is the only Pantheon specific deck that I'm using. So this is, of course, clearly indexed specifically to the Babylonian or Sumerian mythological pantheon. That means it's a natural fit if I want to do goddess work with Inanna Ishtar or any of her other sister goddesses. But here's something really interesting. Ishtar is the first goddess for whom we have written record, which is sort of amazing and means that she becomes something of the narrative ancestress for all of the mythological goddesses I work with. I see her as a foundation for all of that work that I do. So I don't think that this deck is only indexed to the Babylonian mythological canon, although I do primarily use it for that work. The thing about her is that she is a goddess of love, war, sexuality, fertility, death, beauty, and terror. I think that Inanna Ishtar is shameless, and bold and all the things. And that's what the older I get, as I sort of occupy this space between mother and crone, I want to work more myself on figuring out how to occupy those two, the dark and light categories. So the death and life, the beauty and terror, and how to be shameless and still connect with people. So, this deck is great for that work and for deepening a conversation with Ishtar, and exploring those contradictions. So, that is going to be the first deck that I choose that comes with me in my sack as I go into the woods. The second deck is the Ritual Tarot. The copy that I'm showing is a first edition of the deck. I've edged mine in black, and this deck is self-published by Tierra May in 2023, I think, somewhere around there. There is an expanded edition coming out, and if you go to her website and sign up, she will let you know when that Kickstarter is going to be accessible. Otherwise, there's not a copy for sale now, but it is coming back in print. So if you like it, no worries. This is not a surprising pick for someone interested in dark goddess work, right? Um, it has an aesthetic that really calls to and speaks to and engages with the symbolism that we associate with the dark goddess. I have used this deck to work with the Irish goddess Maka, which is a face of the Morrigan, to work with the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet, the lion goddess of death, and the Greek goddess Circe, among others. But I've also used these images to explore the generalized archetype of the dark goddess and the death goddess. I find that sort of foundational archetype to be interesting. I think that the Ritual Tarot, part of what makes it special is that it's flexible enough symbolically to be a site that you can do work for Greek mythology and for Egyptian mythology and for Irish mythology. I don't think, I mean, you can use any tarot deck for anything, right? But I don't think that every deck is as good as this one at feeling capacious and like it speaks to all of those so seamlessly. So, evoking ancient Ireland and ancient Egypt in the same conversation is sort of exciting and fascinating if you want to do this kind of work. And I think that the color palette and the artistic style calls for the abstraction of work with the dark goddess in general. So that is going to be my second deck in my pack. My third deck is the Spolia Tarot. This deck is self-published by Jen May and Jessa Crispin, and it is unfortunately out of print, long out of print, with no plans to republish. This is actually a Minchiati deck, which means that it comes with its larger deck. It comes with a set of 4 element cards and 12 zodiac cards. I don't shuffle these in. It's sort of like, it's a fat enough deck with the card stock that is difficult enough to shuffle, that even if I wanted to put those extra cards in, I would be disinclined to. I don't use this deck as much as I would like to. Because I find it difficult to shuffle. I have, in fact, slightly trimmed this copy. As you see, there are still borders on it. I didn't want to trim borders off completely, but I did want to make it a little bit more manageable for my medium-sized hands. And even with that, I find it a little bit difficult to shuffle. The word spolia, according to the creators, means to use rubble as building material. And I think in part that speaks to their medium. They use not just collage, but old cut and paste collage. Went to a place together and cut up things and put them together, the cards together one at a time as a partnership. This deck is the deck that I've used to work with Medusa. I would say that she's probably the first goddess that I worked with in depth. I worked with in earnest for a number of reasons. She is a beautiful monster. She is a victim, if you know her full myth, who is now an agent who turns her would-be killers into their own kind of rebel. Maybe that's why, in part, why I like her. But this deck it's both sort of delicate and beautiful, but there's a roughness to it because of the medium I find. And that just aligns with the atmosphere that I associate with Medusa. So I find it to be a really great fit for work with her. It's gorgeous and it stings, in my opinion. Um, and I love this deck. I think it's great for working with her. The fourth deck on my list is Tarot of the Crone. This is another one that's difficult for people because it is such a special deck and it is so very out of print. This is a deck by Ellen Lorenzi Prince. My edition is edged in black. It is self-published by her. She is the creator, if you don't know this deck, of the Dark Goddess Tarot, which is mass market, the Minoan Tarot, still in print, I believe, and the Greek Goddess Tarot. And she even has a forthcoming deck called the Dark Daughter Tarot. And these are sort of collective decks that both Dark Goddess and Dark Daughter that bring together a number of very specific myths in different cards. This is a deck that generalizes different faces of the crone. So we don't see, an image of Baba Yaga herself here, although that's kind of arguable actually in the chariot. But we see very few images that are clearly aligned to Sekhmet, for example, or, to a Hawaiian goddess or whatever. These are sort of generalized images that are elastic enough to fit all of the different archetypes. But I would say there's a fascinating unified voice we see here of the ancient mother who has no patience for you, but is beautiful and spicy. And it's just a voice of wisdom. It's a really special deck. I think that it probably deviates more than any other deck that I'm showing from the Golden Dawn tradition. The court cards are not Page Knight Queen King. They are Beast, Witch, Goddess, or Grandmother, I think, and Shadow. Several of the majors are retitled as well, as you will see, and in the guidebook, all of the pips have unique titles, but those are not printed on the cards. The deck is very true to its name, Tarot of the Crone. She is old and angry. She is compassionate and impatient. She is going to talk at you until you listen to her message. Impatient and unforgiving in exactly the right ways. She's perfect for work that I found with Baba Yaga, as well as the Welsh goddess, the Cailleach. That sort of foundational crone prehistoric impatience is so perfect and really lovely for working with her. So this is a fantastic deck for working with the older crone goddess. Now, my very last deck that is very much in print is the Telos Tarot. This deck is published by M.M. Moline, self-published by her. She's my very favorite tarot artist, and she is best known for Tabula Mundi and Rosetta Tarot, both of which are Thoth tradition decks. But Telos Tarot is its own kind of thing. So this deck was richly created over a 4-year period. Excuse me as I organize these decks on the side. Richly created over a 4-year period, with her painting the minors and majors in alignment with their associated calendar and astrological periods. She calls it a talismanic deck, so that the cards are made to be magically worked with as talismans. It comes with a small guidebook in the box, which is fairly descriptive of how she envisions one doing that talismanic magic. As much as I love this deck for both goddess work and general readings, I do not use it for talismanic work. Something about the idea of asking myself to do talismanic work gives me hives. I don't identify as a person who does magic, and it sounds so serious and important, and the ritual behind its creation is sort of overwhelming in a beautiful way. That I maybe don't feel up to the task of using it talismanically, but I find it to be phenomenal and very myth driven in its imagery and perfect for the kind of goddess work I like to do with it. I have to share a story. My nieces, several years ago, were having a very teenage moment, were interested in a boy. One of them was interested in a boy and asked me via Zoom to do, or FaceTime, to do a love spell for her. It was very unclear to me why she was asking me this. I read cards for them all the time, but I have never done anything that, in my mind, would conceivably suggest to them that I do magic. So I explained to them that I do not do magic. I think magic is great, and I don't think it's not real, but I don't think it's something I know how to do. And I wanted to know why on earth they thought I could do a love spell. And they said, well, I'm a tarot reader and I can read the cards. So card readers always do magic. Duh, idiot. I loved that. I still didn't know what a love spell was or how to do it. Everything the movies have taught me is that it's a bad idea to do a love spell anyway. After they explained it to me, they suggested that like they were waiting for me to suddenly remember I can do a love spell and go do one. I did not. And I'm sort of charmed by the idea, and I want to ask them what they think of me being able to do a talismanic magical experience with my Telos Tarot. I think they would assume that I obviously know how to do something with it. Maybe they'll give me the confidence to give that a try. This is the only deck that I use primarily for general work rather than goddess work. So the other decks I really use for goddess work only. This I mostly do general readings with, and clients seem to go bananas for the backs for some reason. They really, really like these backs. Um, as you may have noticed on some of the cards, I mean, we have Inanna represented here. We have, myths of Persephone, dark Persephone reemerging here, gods and goddesses, specific myths sprinkled throughout. And I love how when you do a general reading, these figures are participating in the mundanities or specificities of what you're asking. If I'm asking how to strategize my work on the book project I'm working on, I do a reading and dark Persephone is there to have a conversation with me about it. I adore that, and it's a way for me to engage in that mythological work even when I'm not sitting down to do my serious goddess work. I also think that of all of these decks, this is the deck that I would find most helpful in this group of five to work with the divine masculine. I happen to use this for divine feminine work, but there is nothing about this deck that feels like it's indexed specifically to the divine feminine or that it celebrates the divine feminine over the divine masculine. And I think that that's fantastic. It happens that the other decks do feel more aligned with that divine feminine energy for obvious reasons because I'm listing them here. I'm okay with that, but I really do like that this deck feels so well balanced in that regard. So, all right, everybody, that is my wrap for only 5 tarot decks of the goddess, a video that no one asked for, but was great fun for me to put together anyway. As a review, the 5 decks are the Babylonian Tarot, the Ritual Tarot, the Spolia Tarot, Tarot of the Crone, and Telos Tarot. They're all going to be listed in the description box for this video. And now if somehow I go off grid, I don't talk to anyone, and I say that I'm exploring the goddess all by myself, what decks are going to be in my bag. Very exciting. Now let's do a reading as we close out. A reading for the collective, as we do like to do on this channel. And I'll use the last deck, the Telos Tarot, and ask the question, what aspect of the divine feminine should we think about engaging with this week? So let's see. I'll pull 2 cards because I think that the magic in a tarot reading happens between the cards. So how are 2 cards speaking to each other to tell us what about the divine feminine should we bring forward or thinking about this week? We have the Knight of Wands, and we have the Tower. These are two very masculine and pretty phallic cards. And it's fascinating to get these as answers for how the divine feminine is speaking to us this week. Huh. Let me sit with this. It actually seems pretty clear that there's a suggestion here that we are being asked to not separate our work with the divine feminine and the divine masculine this week. Think of mythology as a well integrated whole. Think about a sort of non gendered exploration of the way that mythology writ large can speak to us, and maybe even think about how the relationship between gods and goddesses in a balanced exploration can do something magical as we consider how the divine feminine is enhanced or uh, you know balanced and speaks to us differently when it's in conversation with that masculine energy. So I love that. I love an invitation to look at more mythology rather than less, and to think about how each of these goddesses speak to and engage with all of the different players in their stories, masculine and feminine. All right. So, if you want some guidance for your own work with the goddess or mythology in general, I am accepting mentoring clients. I'd love to work with you on that or talk with you about it. If you want to sign up for that, the link is in the description. But otherwise, I would also love to know what decks would be in your bag for work with the divine feminine or the goddess, what goddesses you like to work with, gods or goddesses. So please share those in the comments below. I'm always curious and could always use some ideas for my own, the future and evolution of my own work in this regard. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was great fun to share. And until next time, I will see you guys in the lab. Bye.